Hello, 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 hello. Welcome to Spiritual Center Spokane. My name is Reverend Bonnie, and it's my privilege and pleasure to do this Tuesday night series called Talk and Practice. And I am sharing what I am calling my week in spirit, what I have learned, what's unfolded through me, what I've seen, what I experience, and sharing it with you so that the spirit in me, which is the same spirit that is within you, can recognize each other and have a greater and more profound activation and expansion. And so I give thanks for you tuning in, and I give thanks that we have found each other and that we share the same field and that we're here to grow in this thing called life in a way that is beneficial to ourselves and to humanity, that no one is left out in the field, in the presence and the love of God, including us. So we embrace that today. So what a good week it's been. I have shared with you the last 2 weeks, this class that I have been in, where we've learned to love ourselves, meaning love whatever emotion we are experiencing at the present time. And I've had lots of practice this week, as any of you who have been engaged in the experience of feeling something scary or uncomfortable or catching you off guard or pure joyful, or surprisingly delighted, whatever it is that it is in front of us, that we have been willing to not push it away because that's us, it's our energy field we'd be pushing away, but instead that we are willing and able to embrace and love it. So last week, I had planned on starting with a reading from the theologian Matthew Fox, and I was so excited about the week unfolding that I forgot to do that. So I'm going to begin tonight with that reading. I do want to say today's recording and next Tuesday week's recording will both be a pre-record instead of a live at 6 because I'm having dental work. And it's the kind of dental work that makes a lot of noise. And that involves drills and all kinds of stuff that will have some medication accompanying it. And I do not want to come on in an unnatural state. And I want to rest and take care of my body after having that dental experiences. So these have been pre-recorded. That only means, since there is no time and space of God in God, that you won't see live on the side of the YouTube, and instead we'll have an upload. And I do prefer being live. I think it's really fun. I imagine you all out there, but I'm doing that right now as I'm doing a pre-record as well. So there's just as much value. It just shows up in a different way. So thank you for your accommodation. And this is just exciting. So, and I love anything teeth. I'm a teeth person, so I don't like my teeth hurting, but I like um, teeth beautiful and clean and all of that good stuff. So it's my turn to get some teeth work done. So Matthew Fox, who many of you may not be familiar with, he was really, really big in the 90s and 2000s, and I've read all of his books. I love him. Here's a book that I'm taking a quote from. It's The Physics of Angels, and it's his work in partnership with Rupert Sheldrake, who is a scientist. And the Sheldrake and Fox have a conversation back and forth in the book, and they're using their own language to say the same thing. And it's really powerful. I always get really tubo boosted when I hear something in multiple languages. And so I'm going to read a little bit from that today. Matthew Fox is a theologian, and he created this thing called creation spirituality. And one of his most popular books is about us being a blessing instead of being a sin. So it's taking um, the choice of how we see ourselves and saying that God, as the goodness and the glory and the love that it is, can't see sin. It sees only its own reflection of self, which is a blessing. And so he wrote a book on blessing that was very popular and has a whole school called Creation Spirituality. And he teaches that there are two ways to God, or two ways to our core source self. And that is via positiva, which is the positive way, and via negativa, which is the negative way, but both must coexist within everyone. So it's not that you only do the positive route or you only do the negative route. It's that both exist as being companions on the path to connecting with source. And so, via positiva refers to a path of being in awe and wonder and gratitude for creation. It emphasizes goodness and beauty and joy and encourages people to embrace life with appreciation and with celebration. Where via negativa represents darkness and suffering and letting go and the unknown. And it includes the struggles of our life, including pain and loss and mystery. And we have in via negativa encounters with the silence and with emptiness and with suffering, which ends up the more we sit and be with it, connecting us to source. So there's only one place to go, and whether it is a path of positiva or negativa, and he says both must be present, and I agree with him that all of those sources lead to the only thing that is God. So in this book, "This Physics of Angels," I'm going to read a quote from him, a couple paragraphs actually. He says to Rupert Sheldrake, "As you say, the way to enter into this realm of beauty and light and terror that accompanies this realm is through spiritual practice. This is what the mystics mean when they say via negativa, the emptying process, the winnowing and pruning by which we learn to let go and surrender to the light, to a love force that is greater than us. Without this emptying process, this gnosis, we can survive only in the world such as we're in. In that sense, we choose our future depending on how we have allowed ourselves to be pruned in this lifetime." Again, we're back to the dialectic of light and dark. In the darkness, we prepare ourselves for more light. There are many ways to resist the darkness, such as addictions, denials, or just living a superficial life. If we refuse to go into the emptying process, that darkened area of the soul, then we're not going to have the capacity carved out in us to receive a fuller experience of light. And so my experience of this, loving the emotion that is welling up in my field, my experience of that is very much the emptying experience. It's very much a transformative experience of transforming energies that typically humanity pushes away and says, "This is not mine," and instead embracing it and saying, "You are welcome here. I love you. You are welcome here. There's no part of me that is not going to be loved and welcomed." So any feeling, any thought, any idea, I absolutely 100% completely love within me. And in the embrace and in the loving of that, a transformation happens. And for me, this experience has not been fun. It's been very rewarding. It's been very satisfying. I've gotten more energy from it. I believe I've lost weight from it. That's not a benefit that I'm trying to promote, But what I'm just saying is that something has happened when these deep, dark energies inside have been welcomed and embraced. And so I really encourage you guys to practice this, and we can talk about it on our Zoom call this Friday at noon to 1 if you would like. I'd be more than happy to go into more depth about this and talk about your experience. I sent out an email yesterday, Monday, that has the code to get into the Zoom call. And if you did not receive that, or you would like to receive that, you can go to our website, spiritualcenter.org, and there's a contact page, and contact me, and I will make sure that you get the way to get into our Zoom call together on this Friday from noon to 1 Pacific time, which I am so looking forward to. I'm calling it Prayers for Self, Country, and World, and yet it is our own time to be able to look at the light in the dark and call forth the divine presence that is within each one of us for healing and revealing. So I look forward to seeing you there. All right. So this week, the other opportunity that I had, the other moment where I saw God and experienced those goosebumps were through listening to a podcast done by Reverend Michael Beckwith called Take Back Your Mind. And it's with Greg Braden, who is a scientist and who has done a lot of computer programming, who's a systems thinker, who is a linguist. He's very, very multifaceted. And he goes into a conversation with Michael that talks about our genetic coding. And I would like to play 10 minutes of that for you. So I'm going to give it a shot here. And my prayer is that it works and works well, and that you can hear it, and that it comes across with the absolute beauty that it is. So here I'm going to share my screen. There I am. Okay. So let me go to share. Okay, and there I am there. Let's see if I can get into it. Ah, hi, Michael. Okay. Yay, it worked. All right, so here we go.
And we won't even have the activated, expanded awareness that is necessary. And the other thing I wanted you to talk about just for a moment is,
Sure.
you talk about the fact that within our DNA itself, there is language that talks about our divine, that we are divine, that we are the image and likeness of God, that's not just metaphor or prose or religious talk. That's actual embedded in us.
That's a whole conversation. We could do a whole podcast on that. So
But give him a little
I want to
taste.
honor. I will. I want to honor our time. So I'm going to encapsulate this briefly. Let me first say my primary degree, I said, as an earth scientist, but I excelled in. I happened to be a geologist at a time when computers were coming into vogue, and at a time when not many people knew how to program computers. And so I excelled in early programming and the early computers, and I specialized in an area that is called pattern recognition, developing pattern recognition software. Initially, it was during the Cold War years, and there's a whole story about how I ended up there and why I left.
Mhm.
But I learned a lot, and I had access to technology working in that industry. And it was during the same time that the computers were coming into vogue that the first printouts of the human genome became available. Before that, we couldn't see the DNA, all the CTAs and Gs on a computer screen, and they happened at the same time. And the first time I looked at the genome on the computer screen, I knew that it wasn't random. There was information encoded in there. I had to cross traditional boundaries between my studies of ancient languages and linguistics and genetics and chemistry to make use of what those patterns might be. And the bottom line is this: there's a mathematic link between the languages of our past, like cuneiform, Sanskrit, Arabic, Biblical Hebrew. There's a mathematical link between those and the elements that make DNA, hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon. And that mathematical link means those things are interchangeable, which means that you can actually take the letters from the ancient alphabets and place them into the strand of DNA in place of the hydrogen, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon. And the new book actually walks the reader through this if they want that detail. And when you follow the instructions, Michael, it's a mind blower in a 3,000-year-old text called the Sefer Yetzirah, the Book of Creation, was my guide. When you follow those instructions using the best science of the modern world, crossing those traditional boundaries that cost me my reputation as a scientist. I blew it when I did that. But what it reveals is there is an intelligent message in the DNA in every cell of every human that walks this earth. And it's in layers. And the first layer literally reads, it's not a metaphor. It literally reads the words, God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. It doesn't say who God is or where God comes from, but it tells us that we're not random.
Right.
It tells us, and we forget who we are. We get lost. We need look no further than the 50 trillion cells inside of every human body to know that we are God eternal within the body. And I'll tell you why I share that in our live events, Michael, because once I lead my group to derive that for themselves, I'm not saying it, we go through it together.
Yes.
And they see that, then they have a choice. They either have to reject and deny what they've seen, or they embrace it and rearrange their story to accommodate what they've seen. And what that does is it gives us the opportunity to change the way we think of ourselves. Now, when life brings us a problem, when the doctor says there's something not working correctly in the body, or when a relationship, when we are betrayed in our most intimate relationships, or when our abundance channels seem like they're taking a break for a while for whatever reason, what we say is not what am I going to do? How does God eternal within the body address what I've been given, the challenge that I've been given? How does God eternal within the body heal this issue? Emotionally, physically, biologically, psychologically, whatever it is. And this is one of those places where the words probably break down, Michael, and someone just has to experience it to know. But what I'll say is it makes a huge difference because it changes our story.
Yes.
In our story, we live our lives. We choose our friendships. We choose our careers, our politics. The people we share our lives with, we're all adults here, the people we share our bed with. It's all determined by the way we've been taught to think of ourselves. And when we begin to shift that story, it changes the way that we deal with whatever happens to us in the world. And I believe it changes it in a positive way, because that could go either way. It changes it in a positive way. For people who are biblically inclined, it supports biblical passages. For example, I think it's 1 Corinthians 3:16, where the apostle is saying, know ye not that the Spirit of God lives within your body. I mean, they're saying it right there, that your body is a temple. Know ye not that your body is a temple. So
of the living God, the temple of the living God.
Of the living God. And so as an amateur archaeologist, what I can say is this: every ancient civilization, when I take groups into the Andes in southern Peru or Egypt or Greece or wherever it is, and our ancestors built temples. Those temples were built in layers. And the innermost layer, the innermost sanctum, is where the deepest wisdom and the greatest secrets were always held. And it was called the Holy of Holies.
Holy of Holies.
Well, we, as the temple of the living God, have not one Holy of Holies. We have 50 trillion Holy of Holies, because the nucleus of every cell holds the DNA that tells us that we are God eternal within the body. And this is why I think it's so important to teach our young people to a deeper respect for the gift of their bodies and their humanness, because when they're given no reason to think differently, then they're given no reason to consider what they take into their bodies and what they place upon their bodies, because they're taught that they are flawed.
Yes.
So this, I know for some people, a different way of thinking, and then for some people it's uncomfortable, and for other people it's right up their alley. If you need a reason to think differently, it's in the cells of our bodies, and it mirrors what we're not, even from a religious perspective, from an information perspective. And I believe it is, now that I'm just doing this from memory, I think it is 1 Corinthians 3, 16. People, and then the verse following clarifies. It clarifies even deeper. So in many ways, we're being led to the same outcome. There's something rare, beautiful, ancient, sacred, powerful, precious about every one of us. And I think when we begin to embrace that, Michael, we live our lives to reflect that. And I think it's good for everyone. It's a good thing
Right.
for all of us.
It transcends skepticism, and it transcends believing. We're actually awakening to a reality that's beyond religion.
Next time I am blessed to be at Agape, I will lead our community in a very high level briefly through that process. And it is a powerful process when you can actually see the code of the DNA become the letters of the root alphabets of our most cherished spiritual traditions. And then there's a message that was left for us. Because, you know, when I think about this as an artist, when an artist finishes something, a musician finishes a song, or a painter finishes a canvas or a sculpture, you know, or I finish a book, when the creator is proud of what they have created, they place a signature on it.
Right.
The science tells us we are not the product of random mutations, that there has been an intervention in our ancient past that gave us the mutations for our humanness. I would hope that who or whatever is responsible for that was proud enough at the end of that creation to put a signature. And the message, God eternal within the body, for me, fulfills that hope. That is the signature, who or whatever. And interestingly, the name of that is written in our bodies is the same name. It's spelled the same way that we see in so many of the ancient texts. So maybe I need to close there. That was what this is all about.
That was it, because we don't want to become transhuman and deny all this beauty.
There we go. It took a minute for me to figure out how to actively close that, but it happened and it's good. So I took some notes. I've listened to that now 4 or 5 times, and I went onto YouTube to hear Greg show his science behind that and his assignment of mathematical numbers to the different gene codes, and to come up with that God eternal within the body, and have that be what is read from all the ancient languages, from Sanskrit and ancient Hebrew and Aramaic, and he goes into more depth about it in his video. But to just sit with the knowing that you and I are God beings, that within us is a code, and I didn't even have to know and hear that to know it, but to hear that is a powerful reminder that in the nucleus of every single one of my cells is a coding that says to me, God eternal within the body, that I am a physical form of the manifest God, and that my body is a living temple. And I looked up his 1 Corinthians 3:16, and the Bible that I looked it up in said, do you not know that you are the temple of God, and the Spirit of God dwells in you? And what mystics have long taught is that our breath is the Holy Spirit. And so that as we breathe and we become aware of our breath, we become aware that we don't breathe us, that the breath breathes us, that Bonnie, the personality, isn't breathing my body. Bonnie is aware of the breath going on in my body. And that breath is the Holy Spirit, that which is eternal, that which gives life. It is the life force. And it's really powerful to meditate and put the focus on our breath and feel it in our body. And then the more we do that, the more we realize that we are never alone. We can't be. It's evidenced through breath. So very powerful, very lovely. So I'm glad I had the opportunity to share that snippet with you. Again, that was from Take Back Your Mind with Reverend Michael Beckwith, who I so deeply love and care about. So this week, I also had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine about this practice that I have embraced, which is to love everything that is in my field and in my space. And as we were talking, I went off into my quantum talk. And it was so powerful for me that I wish it had been recorded because it was so clean and clear. But I like to go back to the memory that I am a field of energy. So I am so much more than my body, and my field has a body. So my body is essential. It is important. It allows me to experience all of the sensations that we get to have as a human. So one of the ways to say it is that God is doing God through me, and the only way that it can do it in physical form is to have a body. So when I touch myself, I'm touching God. When I touch another person, I'm touching God. When I see through my eyes, we know that as soon as we are dead, we still have eyes, but there's no sight. And that's because the energy field behind the eyes sees through the eyes. It's not the eyes that see. So there's an energy field behind the eyes that is what sees. There's an energy field behind the ears that utilizes the eardrums in order to hear. There's an energy field that allows us to sense and to feel. And that's why I say that feeling is of God, emotions is attached to our perception. And so our sensations, our sensory bodies are all part of this field in which we occupy. So because I have meditated every single day, or almost, I should say there's a few days that I didn't in there for the last 30 plus years, that I'm able to recognize the wave that I am more than the particle that I am. I'm able to recognize that I occupy a field that is always changing, and that means I'm always changing. That means my hair color is changing. That means I now have more lines on my face than I did even just a couple years ago, which is fun. And that I have skin little things. I am changing. My physical self is changing. My physical self will always change. I live in a changing field. And I find that exciting. I don't find that scary. I find that I may not like some of the times the things that I see, but then I get to practice self-love, right? I get to practice loving myself. And I'm just so grateful that I get to stand witness to my body from a field that is changing. And I'm also keenly aware that as a co-creator with this field presence, that I have impact and influence on this field. I'm not a random, passive presence within it, that it's very much an active appreciation for and a love of this divine self within me. So just as God deeply, deeply loves Bonnie, Bonnie deeply, deeply loves that I'm awake and aware to this divine presence, because it's a partnership. that we have that is so beautiful. And of course, we're not equal partners in that God is really all there is, and Bonnie's an expression of it. So partner's kind of a weird word for it, but I am really actively aware that how I perceive the world, which can be low or can be high, is a reflection of the world that I see. So, so as my friend and I were talking about this field, I was saying that it's like when we have, let me give you an example. This morning I woke up with some anxiety, and I don't need to know where it's from. It was just there. And it lasted only a couple minutes because I loved myself through it. I didn't push it away. I didn't get frightened. I didn't grab for medication. And I have no judgment there. I'm just saying that in this practice, what I did was felt the feelings and breathed through it. And as my heart rate was increasing and as my body was starting to sweat and do all kinds of stuff, I just sat with myself and breathed myself calm. And I don't know the last time you guys have had your blood pressure done, but if I've ever gone in and it's slightly elevated, I say to the person taking it, give me 1 minute so I can get centered and then take it again. And then it always 100% goes down into normal range for me. And so I'm really aware that there is that who I am and how I show up makes a difference in the field. And I also know that as this thing Gregg Braden said is in my cells, God eternal within my body, it's that God eternal within my body that shows up for any kind of irregularity in my field, including what we call um, what we call anxiety. So God eternal within my field shows up and sits with, and I breathe through this thing that's called anxiety. And I said to myself, look, I love you. I'm not going anywhere. Have all the anxiety you want and stay as long as you want. And I'm good. And within a couple minutes, it dissipated. And I don't have anxiety often. I have it every once in a blue moon. And I don't know what brings it on, and it doesn't matter because to me, as an energy field, when there's something disruptive, I sit with it, I allow it to be. I allow that to be true with any feeling tones of depression. I sit with it and I allow it to be present, and I love it, and I go about doing what's mine to do while I allow it in my field, and somewhere along the process it dissipates. Same with heartbreak, same with betrayal, disappointment, whatever it is. When I show up for that energy and say, you're welcome here. This is your home too. I love you. Hang out with me, then it realizes that I'm not pushing it away and turning it into a thing and growing it, but instead I'm just folding it into my being, and then amazing things happen. So I'm really into this practice. As you know, I will bring it up from time to time. I'm sure I'm finding it just so delicious that it's really inspiring me in some significant ways. And I'm grateful for what I heard from Gregg Braden, and then, of course, from Matthew Fox, who's always been so beautiful. In our New Thought teaching, we talk so much about the good of God, and we should, because that is the set point. However, we have experiences that feel, that emote unlike that. And that's our opportunity to be able to show up as that God eternal within our body and stand witness and basically allow ourselves to love ourselves back into ourselves. So it's an ongoing process. It's quite beautiful. I'm very grateful to have been reintroduced to it and to be playing and practicing it with you. And yeah, I think another another week of talking about love, another week of talking about how we move in the world as a spiritual being. So thank you for being here and thank you for listening and playing with this. And it is my hope that you receive the transmitted energy as I speak and allow yourself to receive it in ways that will be of service to you. So let us go ahead and go into meditation today. And as we go into meditation today, we're going to go in with the knowing that, as Greg had said in that video, that this God eternal within the body is the language of the first layer of the coding of ourselves. So he called it the inner sanctum. It's the place of the holy of the holies. And then it becomes a little bit more complicated as it expands and goes outward. So we are going to stay with the holy of the holies as we enter today into meditation. So let's go ahead and feel our feet on the ground and close our eyes. Place our hands on our heart if you choose to. Repeat after me. This is a good day. This is a God day. And we set the intention as we enter into a silence together. We set the intention to connect with and tap into the Holy of the Holies, which lives inside of our body temples, which is the very self that we are. We allow ourselves to tap into the nucleus of our cells that has the code God eternal within the body. God eternal within the body. And as we enter into the silence together today, focused on our breath, we just allow ourselves to feel into that natural coding of our being, that you and I are holy beings. We are a temple of the Most High God, and that God eternal lives in our body. And I set the intention for us so you don't need to do anything with it other than just follow your breath as we sit in the silent emptiness together. And if your mind wanders, bring it back to your breath. Remember to breathe as you meditate. Remember to breathe. Focus on your breath. Feel it moving in your body temple. And so right here and right now, I give thanks for each and every one of us on this YouTube video. Knowing that there is no time and space in God, there's also no distance. And so knowing that right where I am and right where you are is the epicenter of God. And that this divine presence lives within us and it lives around us. And it can, if we open to it, lead us and guide us and unfold a way where we can't see a way. That the brilliance and the glory of God is at work right here and right now. And that the earnest prayers that we speak from our being are prayers that began in God and return to God. And so I give thanks for all of those that we recognize that have been answered. Even though it may have taken years, decades, or immediate answer, that there is a knowing in the universe that arranges and rearranges things, and that the more awake we are to the brilliance of God, the more we see it in action. And so I just give thanks for this. I just give thanks for this. I give thanks for being alive today on this earth plane. I give thanks for the work of Michael Beckwith and Greg Braden and everyone who's gone before us and everyone who's with us now that is speaking the word of God in all the different ways that it shows up, scripturally, physically, kinetically, in the field, that God is everywhere present, always at work, and the opportunity to be able to see it and to be able to embrace it and to be able to recognize that we aren't alone. We've never been alone. We never will be alone is such a beautiful balm. And so I just give thanks that today is another day for each one of us and that it's a good day. I bless us all and I call my life and our life good. And so it is. Amen. All right, my friends. Again, this Friday, welcome back, by the way. I should give us a little pause because the meditations are so yummy. But this Friday, noon to 1, you're invited to a prayers for self, country, and world, and that is on Zoom so we can see each other and wave to each other and giggle with each other. And it's our time together. So bring questions, desires, awarenesses, and we will be together in the field. Again, you should be receiving an email, and if you haven't received it, then please contact me through the website, spiritualcenterspokane.org, and I will see you Friday. Love and blessings to you.